The story of the ANC commemorating the life and times of its longest-serving president, Oliver Tambo. Now, the party is embarking on a series of activities to honor the late anti-apartheid activist. We understand now Gauteng Premier Panyaza Lesufi is on the podium. Let's listen in.
Our books about this little O.R. Tambo. If we can't do that, we would have betrayed him. It must be normal, comrades, even in Orania, to have a teacher saying, "More class, vandaag onze lees about Oliver Reginald Tambo." It's a betrayal that we must not accept if it happens. Even those that are at the helm of education currently, even those that are leading the Department of Basic Education, they must know the people's history must be in the people's classroom everywhere. And if they are cowards, Habari Chief Tele, we the brave will lead the revolution. We'll never betray the cause. We'll never betray the cause to ensure that there's total emancipation. But I want to report to President Tambo, the seat of our government, Tswane, President Tambo, it's back under the leadership of the African National Congress. It has created pain, it has created misery to the enemy, but we are not scared. They can insult us, they can do whatever they wish. We remain black, green and gold, and we are unshakable, and we are not cowards. Cowardice is not an option. Some of us, we are not products of cowards, we are products of heroes like Oliver Tambo. We are not products of cowards, we are products of heroes like Chris Hani. And therefore, those that are cowards, that are not ready to take the struggle forward, they must shift. We are ready to take the beating and lead the struggle for freedom. We are not going to be scared by those that threaten us. We are going to stand firm because it's through the African National Congress that we can totally liberate our country. Comrades, allow me to call somebody. They claim he was a mayor for 3 hours. The others claim that he sold land that created Eastern Mall in that 3 hours. Let's welcome the former Secretary General of our labor movement, the former chairperson of the South African Communist Party, the current minister responsible for energy resolutions in our country. Comrades, let's put our hands together and have a revolutionary song from Gwede Mantashe. Comrade President.
Lento manje mayor for 3 hours. Amanda. Away to. Amanda. Away to. Mata. Arona. Matimba. Aina. Manda. Asu. All power. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Program director, the Tambo family, the family Akut, it's our family. Nobody owns that family. We all own that family. Our fundis, religious leaders, all the chaplain general, Dean. I think I was told you are 10 of the church. Members of the NEC present here, I bring together NEC and ministers as one. That is the leadership of the movement. Leaders of the PEC and the Premier of Gauteng as the leader. Members of the RSC and the executive mayor of Ekurhuleni, Dr. Kagaza. Kagaza, you have to go to school, you must be a real doctor. You can't just have doctor as a name. You must go to school. Branches of the ANC present here, and members of the community who are here, members of the diplomatic corps. Thank you very much for being here, because your presence represents the presence of your countries. Thank you very much. Today in the morning, we went to church, Premier. Went to church. And the church gave us a message twice. And the message was about restoration. Restoration. They gave us an example of restoring Job, and they gave us the example of restoring Bartholomew, so that he was to be restored his sight again. But to me, it meant something deeper than that, Chaplain General. Much deeper than that. It meant that we owe it to Oliver Tambo and to the ANC to restore the glory of the ANC. That is the essence of that glory, of that restoration to me, that we must restore the glory of the ANC. Oliver Tambo belongs to a generation of youth leaguers of 1944. That generation is unique in one way. It led the revolution for 5 decades. If you count 1944 to 1994, it's exactly 5 decades. And Tambo belonged to that generation of youth leaguers. They went to the Youth League in 1944, they invaded the NEC in 1949 and led the African National Congress. And they led the revolution for 5 decades. And that honor is something that we must never forget in South Africa. Now, these youth leaguers, this was a special generation, Comrade. I want to tell you, why do I link this today with restoration? We first lost control of major economic centers, the cities of our country. We lost that. We lost the Western Cape, it's a major economic center. We lost this year Gauteng, is the center, is the economic hub of the country. We lost KZN, is the economic hub of the. We can list the reasons for losing the control of those areas. We can. There are many of them. We can take shortcuts. We can do scientific analysis. But the reality of the matter is that we lost. That's why restoration fits the theme of today's celebration of Oliver Tambo. Because we must regain the control of the country and the political space as the ANC. And I want to trace Oliver Tambo in the program of action. Program of action, which was translated into the program of the ANC. It was the program of the Youth League. It went to the ANC, and that program of action guided the ANC throughout. It can take different shapes, and half the time, when we talk of Tambo, we talk of the exile. And when we talk of consultative conferences, we normally talk about Morogoro and Kabwe. Very important consultative conference that we forget is Lobatse. The first conference, consultative conference of the ANC was in Lobatse. And Oliver Tambo was sent out of the country, and Lobatse determined the journey that we're going to be taking over the next 30 years from that time. So we're here today. Tambo led us. And I always said, one thing about Tambo, Tambo was very scriptural and very biblical, Danny. I always remind people that Tambo is the only man I remember was baptized twice. He's the only man I remember who was baptized twice. He was baptized, he went to exile, he came back, he went back to the church and said, you will baptize me again because of many things that happened under my leadership. No other person did that. Only Tambo can be reminded. And he was baptized by the Anglican Church. And the Anglican doesn't baptize you twice, but it did. Number two, it is important that Tambo shaped the program of the ANC. If you talk of any program of the ANC, whether it is shaped in Rogoro or shaped in Kabwe, Tambo is at the center of it. Today, we can boast of being anything and everything, but Tambo provided that leadership under the most difficult times. You know, when we lost the majority on the 29th of May, Comrade Panyaza, we were faced with one challenge. What are we going to do? As we lose the majority, are we going to go to the opposition benches? We said, no, that will be irresponsible. Should we form a minority government? No, it will not be powerful enough. Should we form a grand coalition? We said, no. And we asked the question, with who? We looked at I know when everybody almost insulted us and said, you form a coalition with the DA. That is not true. I'm going to explain that briefly. We said everybody must come. And people who put condition walked away. Okay. So to me, when people say you should have formed a coalition with MKP or EFF because they are less dangerous, to me, if Floyd could take a public platform and say, our intention is to remove the ANC surgically from power, that is not less dangerous. Because that is not less dangerous. Surgical means you cut. You see, you remove the ANC surgical from power. That was the intention of the EFF. That is not less dangerous. MK wanted to remove a president of the ANC, say, remove. We reminded them that when Zuma was the president of the ANC, EFF put the same condition. We refused, and we're refusing now. Then we said everybody is invited. Those who didn't want to be under the same roof, they left. Now they say, we are sleeping with the enemy. And I asked them, who is this enemy? They say it's the DA. I say that is selective righteousness. Selective righteousness. Because you all sit with the DA in parliament, you serve with the DA in committees, but when it is in the cabinet, you become self-righteous. It's selective. It is not working. We are struggling in a terrain that is not of our own choosing. It's a terrain that was imposed on us by the fact that we lost the majority. And the GNU is a consequence. It's not a plan. Nobody planned the GNU. GNU is a consequence of having lost a majority in the elections. And our restoration will be to regain that majority and begin to govern on our own. That will be restoration. And it will happen if we do the right thing, even when there is a GNU or a PNU and all those things. It's fine. Let's do what is right. ANC members who are in those cabinet posts must do their work and they must talk about it. The problem is that we're not very keen in talking public about what we do. And our opponents exaggerate what they do, even if they only do and graduate what was started by the African National Congress. Now, I am submitting here. I regard Oliver Tambo as the president of the ANC who was head and shoulder above all. We can say anything. He was head and shoulder above all. The man was humble, but the man was dedicated. The man led the ANC under the most difficult conditions and kept it intact. One of the issues that the ANC must pay attention to is the question of growing trust deficit between the ANC and the people. And if we're going to do that, one thing we must do is to remember that it is the primary responsibility of the ANC to mobilize every class and stratum of society. So the ANC is not a vanguard of the working class. Okay. Sometimes you confuse these things. And regarding as the vanguard of the work, it is not. It is having the responsibility to mobilize every class and every stratum of society. And if we do that, then we'll begin to talk about motive forces of the revolution. And what are these motive forces of the revolution? The motive forces of the revolution are all those who stand to benefit from social change led by the ANC. So it is not class-based. Actually, when they are counted, it is said it is working class, it is the rural peasants, it is aspirant capitalists. You see, aspirant capitalists. You know, let me first think of aspirant capitalists. People don't appreciate that aspirant capitalists are also the motive forces because they were never given the opportunity to be economically active under apartheid. And the ANC has given them an opportunity to be economically active. Therefore, they are beneficiaries of change. And therefore, they are part of the motive forces. Now, and if the ANC can begin to go back to those basic theories, it will never go wrong. I was talking to one of my comrades last week, comrade. We must never distort a theory of the revolution. The National Democratic Revolution is properly developed and written. It's not just thrown around. You know, we were given 3 contradictions. These 3 contradictions are interrelated. You can't separate them. It's race, it's class, it's gender. So you can't focus on one and leave the other 2. Because if you do that, you are going to commit a mistake. For example, let's say you leave the race. You are going to commit a mistake of thinking that black men have reached the destination. They have not. We still struggle together. 3 contradictions of the colonialism of a special type. Each almost is. It is a contradiction of the colonialism of a special type. It's race, class, and gender. We're discriminated because we're black. We're super exploited because we're black workers. We're triple oppressed because we're black women. So don't separate them, integrate them, and try to resolve all 3 of them if we're going to have our freedom. If we have not resolved all 3 of them, we have not achieved our freedom. Internationally, we must always express our gratitude to all countries, particularly the Nordic countries, I must say, who supported us during our struggle. And we should continue supporting those countries that are actually struggling. The genocide in Palestine is not a Middle East issue, it's not an African issue, it's a global issue. Because, you know, this thing of a selected nation that must not be touched, but it kills people in thousands. It's something that must be debated openly. We can't allow a genocide to go under religion. One priest was reminding us, Ogoti, do you know that Jesus himself was not a Christian? He was belonging to the Jewish faith. Okay, Christians are after him. Okay, so this thing of looking into one nation and say this is a selected nation, therefore we can attack everybody in the Middle East, and we can't say so because religiously we're loyal. That is not loyalty. That is being indifferent to a massacre. The people of Palestine are being massacred, and we can't be indifferent. And religion will never justify indifference when there is a massacre. We are actually beneficiaries of support and solidarity. When we were oppressed by apartheid regime, we are today free. And when I go to Limpopo, they tell me that Babata Mwanamungu. I tell them that nothing Mwanamungu go Limpopo. Mwanamungu. Bafunumda numkuba. Eastern Cape, Lumda numkuba. Because my freedom is not provincial. I'm free in the whole country. And my freedom cannot be limited. And therefore, when we try to be limiting ourselves and be regionalistic, we must remember that the ANC destroyed regionalism, tribalism, because those were regarded as the most backward forms of politics. We can't go back there. We can't go back there. So we're celebrating Tambo Day, but more important is the recommitment of all of us to restoration of the African National Congress. If we can restore the ANC, anything we do is hollow. It's like a hollow sound. If we say we're committed to the legacy of Oliver Tambo, but we can't restore the ANC, it's a hollow sound. It will only be meaningful when we restore the ANC to its rightful place in society. One of the best things about this is that its revolution is theorized and is documented. So you don't need to do anything. If we're not reading, we're going to miss the game because we're lazy to read and therefore we don't understand the revolution in details. We're here today to celebrate Oliver Tambo, life well spent. You can't separate Oliver from Adelaide, unfortunately. Whether you want or you don't want, you can't separate them. That's right. So when we celebrate Oliver, we celebrate Oliver and Adelaide. Now, you know, we've gone through a very detailed analysis of the situation and we made all sorts of observations. We called it a diagnostic and we went through it. And I was telling them, I'm not a doctor. I said, listen guys, a diagnosis is only as good as you can get the correct prescription. If you do diagnosis and you don't get the correct prescription, that diagnosis doesn't help you. You will die with the diagnosis. So we must revive the ANC. We must stand up in honor of Oliver Tambo, in honor of Adelaide Tambo. We must revive the ANC. The ANC must be restored. That is my message of the day, is the restoration of the African National Congress. Thank you.
All right, that is the national chairperson of the ANC, Gwede Mantashe, there at the wreath-laying ceremony for the longest-serving ANC President Oliver Tambo there, also using the time to address other issues closest and dearest to the liberation movement at this time, including the Government of National Unity. And that is all coming from the East Rand right now at that ceremony.